Hey there, everybody. Kelly Falardeau here, and I am the founder of the Grit, Guts, and Courage show. And in this show, we talk to people who have overcome something. And so today, my guest is Debbie Bryan, and I'm really excited because I don't know what she's going to talk about. So I want to listen to her, and I'm hoping you guys are going to enjoy her story. So Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So we're in very hot UK today, so it's unusual for us to have hot weather.
Oh, that's so cool. Actually, I'm in Canada and it's raining here. So, but we need the rain because there's been lots of fires around here. So we're happy to have the rain. So, okay, Debbie, let's just jump right into it. So tell us your story of grit, guts, and courage.
Okay, so my story, I suppose, I title it 2 Steps Saved My Life. So 12 years ago, I was a hairdresser in a health club, really happy, going to different classes, cycling, real fitness person. I had my own salon, actually. I wasn't just a hairdresser, I had my own salon. And one day I decided that I was going to go and buy a car. It was a long story, but I wanted to go and buy this car. It was a bit of we call it like an old banger here. So it was a pretty cheap car. I wanted to get rid of a company car. So we had to go about 40 miles away, bought it off eBay, got the car, me and my husband, and we drove back. And the car was absolutely fine until we swapped over at the services. I was driving a beautiful BMW and he was driving the old banger. So I swapped over and said, it's really fair because it was my decision that I drive that and you go and pick the children up. And I got back onto, we call it a dual carriageway here. So it's like 2 lanes road. Got back on and all the power went out of the car. It just literally, I was driving along and I lost the power in the car and I just thought, okay, I don't really know what to do here. So I managed to coast to the side of the road. But it's January, it's cold, it's dark in the UK. It's not a proper hard shoulder. It's just like a half a hard shoulder. So I was like, oh, if I go on the grass, it's going to be too wet and I'm going to get stuck. Anyway, I phoned my husband and said to him, look, maybe we've run out of petrol. I don't know. The car was fine for sort of like 35 miles. So with that, I'm sitting in the car, there's lorries going past, they're pretty close, but I'm not in a dangerous position. So as I see my husband pull up about 5-10 minutes later, I jump out the car to go to open the petrol cap. Now I think I probably didn't know how to open it. It's a brand new car, right? No new. So I jumped out, and as I looked at his car, somebody drove into the back of him, just bashed into the back of his car. And I was like really shocked and thought, oh, but he looked okay. The car was shunted. And just for a second, I thought, well, okay, he's fine. And then the car, somehow it hit the car. I didn't know until afterwards, but it ripped one of his wheels out. And so he carried on coming to where I was stood. So as I'm stood on the side of this busy dual carriageway, I'm like, there's nowhere for me to go. I either have got to step into the road with the traffic, and it's a busy road, or step to where I think that the car's going to come. And at that minute, I just thought, I'm going to die and this is going to hurt. And just for a couple of seconds and then I just thought, no, I'm not dying, I'm not going, I'm not leaving my boys behind. They're not ready, they think they're old enough. Jake thinks he's old enough because he's like probably 19. I'm not going. And so blindly I took 2 steps and stepped away from where I was. The next thing I know, the car's hit my car exactly where I was stood. And he'd hit my leg, but I was still standing. When he hit my leg, it was kind of like I was standing on ice. And I remember thinking, well, okay, that didn't hurt as much as I thought it was going to. And then the car, as it was like on its side on 3 wheels, kind of cuffed my shoulder and I spun around and fell onto all 4s. And as I fell onto all 4s, I could feel like bits of car, an indicator. And I looked over my shoulder and I was in the lane. I was actually into the road. He'd knocked me into this dual carriageway. And I thought, bugger, now I'm really going to die. So I then had to crawl to the side of the road, and I managed to get to the side of the road. But what I didn't actually realise was some amazing gentleman had seen what was happening, and he'd stopped his van, which had actually stopped the traffic, where I'm so lucky. And he came to the hospital the next day and said, those 2 steps that you took saved your life. So that's kind of, I suppose, where my grit story starts. I really just thought I was bruised. There was no blood. I broke a nail. I couldn't see anything else broken apart from the nail. I just knew that I couldn't stand on the leg. So when they got me to the hospital and I said to my son, I think I've bruised it. He said, no, you've definitely broken it. And I was like, okay. Anyway, they decided to operate on it. So the next day, the surgeons come to me and they said, right, the leg is broken. And I was really in shock. I'm like, I've gone to buy a car and then here I am. And I didn't even know, like, I thought if you break your leg, 6 weeks later, it was all fine. And
Right.
that's just how it was. You know, you have a car, 6 weeks later, we're all good. So that's my head at that stage. And I'm pretty terrified that I'm going to lose my business because, like, if I can't go to work, who's going to look after it? So they come to me, the surgeon, they're really excited when they come in. They are literally like raised. They go, yes, surgery. And he said, right, we can operate on the leg, but you're not going to be able to use the leg at all. And I said, what do you mean? No, that can't happen. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm a hairdresser and I'm in a gym and I've got children and they play football. I can't not have the use of my leg. And he just went, oh, and he went away. And I just thought, oh, okay. And then he came back and said, right, we've got another plan. A little like a half day later, we've got another plan. So you'll be able to use your leg, but you won't be able to bend the knee. And I was like, no, you're not listening to me. I have a hair salon. I have to be able to use my leg. I have to, like, how am I going to pay my wages? How am I going to pay all these other things? Mad. I didn't even know that you had a choice, to be honest. This is just probably my shock as such. And then they went away and they came back with another thing. And eventually they came back and said, right, we've got a plan. We're going to take some bone out of your hip. We're going to dig deep and we're going to graft that onto your leg. And I was like, okay, that sounds fine. Let's go with that. I woke up after the operation with 22 screws and 2 plates in my, what I thought was a bruised leg. And it was nowhere near in the terms of like a 6-week recovery. I think I tried to go back to work. I was in hospital for 2 weeks. And then I actually went back to hairdressing 9 months after that. And so some of it was tough, some of it was good. I was very, very positive. I think the one thing for me was that I felt like I was the luckiest person in the world, which is bizarre, I know. But when people said to me, gosh, what's happened to you? And I'm like, I'm the luckiest person in the world. I should be in the morgue. So I'm not in the morgue. This is the best case scenario. And that was where my head went. It's not where my husband's head went. It's not probably where my family's head went. But for me, I had this like mad euphoria that I was safe because I'd stood there and thought I was going to die. So when I didn't, I was like, well, this is not as bad as it could be. And I imagine that mad euphoria. Number one, I became really annoying. I was like, it's Mother's Day. I shouldn't be here. I think my family wanted to euthanize me at one point. They just thought, no, go, you're actually more annoying. And I weren't a great patient. I was a terrible patient, very impatient. But I guess like going through the physio and having to be total non-weight bearing from the January until July, having to use the mobility scooters to get about or be on crutches for a long time. And some of the other stuff, that euphoria is what kept me going, because I just thought this could have been so much worse. And how can I complain? You know, I think my first book I read was Bear Grylls. I was like, okay, he's done that. So eventually go back to hairdressing. And because the cars hit me, obviously, the insurance company is saying, okay, we want to have a look at what's happened. So they start sending me to these surgeons for a long-term prognosis. And then the surgeons come back to me. So I've done the physio. And every time my physio was quite tough, but every time she said, do this all weekend, bend your leg all weekend, I would religiously do it, because I really believed that if I did what they told me, I'd get back to where I was. And I'm not even a person that ever does as they're told, but on this one occasion, I was like, whatever they say I need to do, that's what I will do. So I'd done that for a year and then went to see a few different surgeons in the UK. And they all came back and said, you're going to be in a wheelchair at 55. And I just thought, no, now I'm going to have to fight that. That can't happen, because it just can't. Why would I want to be in a wheelchair at 55? So I kind of ignored them and carried on hairdressing for a while, and then eventually came out of the hairdressing, had other businesses. And then last year, I suppose, a couple of things happened last year in that I signed up for a bike ride. My friend had done a bike ride. So I've had another couple of operations since then. Always a little bit under the radar of this 55 thing, that I had to beat it, that I had to kind of not give in to it type thing. And I know that sounds awful, because some people are in a wheelchair, and I'm aware that I'm really lucky in terms that I wasn't straight away. So last year I signed up for this big bike ride just as a challenge. I'm a bit use it before you lose it as such. And I signed up for a bike ride in India to cycle from the Taj Mahal to Jaipur. This is 360 kilometers. And I was terrified. I got to be honest, so terrified. I'm not a cyclist in any way, shape, or form. I made mistakes with my kit. I only just learned how to change gear last year. I didn't even know I was doing it all wrong. And even to a point, I ordered some cycling shorts, which turned out to be very see-through. And I cycled hundreds of miles around the Cotswolds in these shorts because they have padding. I was only worried about, the bumps. And it wasn't until I was getting my kit for India, I realized that they were actually underwear and not shorts. So I've been cycling for hundreds of miles in my underwear. So I'm a proper amateur. And so that came up last year. So I completed that bike ride. I took it one bit at a time, day by day, section by section, completed the bike ride and turned 55 last year. So I defied the odds of the surgeon, did the bike ride, and then actually got injured in the gym after that, on cycling on the gym, watching the TV, got injured. But I guess that's my story of how I probably use like my own mindset and my resilience to overcome the odds.
Oh my God, I love your story. It's just so incredible because, there's a lot of times people tell us we can't do something and yet we prove them wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that no means that if someone says no to me, I just think I've asked the wrong person. And it's need to go and ask somebody else to go, okay, how can I do this? And I suppose I just thought that if I'm 100% honest, I didn't even talk about this until last year. I think I wanted to go, shh, not 55, don't tell them, in case they notice me and go, oh, forgot that one needs a wheelchair. And I just thought that I'd done what everybody else would do. I really didn't think that I'd done anything to talk about or anything special until I started talking about it, and people were like, not everybody would maybe react that way. I don't know. I'd like to think that most people would, but I am a coach and I do help people who are, for want of a better word, off their feet, to kind of pick themselves up and get back on their feet. And that can be for any scenario. It can be whether they're stuck, whether they're stuck in their business or stuck in their life, something's happened that stopped them. Because I think I was lucky. I am very, very lucky. But when people tell me I'm lucky, I'm like, I'm not really lucky. I'm what's called cat lucky. So cat lucky is like you fall off the wall, but somehow you eventually land on your feet. So it doesn't mean to say that we don't mess it up, but at least we bounce back and get back up on our feet. And I think that's the only lucky that you can be.
I think what happens though is that sometimes when somebody like a doctor says, well, you're going to be in a wheelchair by 55, they're like, okay, I guess I'll accept that. I'm going to be in a wheelchair at 55. Where you said, hell no, I'm not going to be in a wheelchair at 55. What am I going to do to make sure that doesn't happen? And I think that, it's sad that doctors put that thought into some people's heads, because it probably does stop some people from moving forward in life. Whereas you thought, this is not going to stop me. I'm moving forward. I don't care what the doctors say. So I love that.
I'm just not very good at rules. I think rules are good for other people and they're not good for me. So I was like, yeah, that's what's going to happen to someone else. That's not what's going to happen to me. So I suppose it's fair. I don't really think about it, but I suppose it is fairly powerful, that kind of self-belief to go, okay, if I want to do something, I can achieve whatever I need to achieve, but I have to really want it.
Right. I know, I'm the same way.
Yeah, if I don't, I can like that, it's not going to happen. But India, so for India, I was inspired by a female boxer for India. So it's a big ask, you're cycling for, so my friend had trained me before we went, so we were able to cycle like 45 to 50 miles on a Sunday. That's fine. So I knew I could do the distance.
Yeah.
But 5 days in a row is a different thing. First day is great. Second day, you're already exhausted. And the second day was 100K. It was the longest ride. And so I was like, I've done one day. So I bumped into this lady, I think her name's Amy Andrews. And somebody asked her, she didn't start boxing until she was 31 and she's Olympic. And somebody said to her, what makes you get out of bed in the morning for the hill runs? What motivates you? And she said, nothing. She said, but I do know that if I don't get out of bed and do the hill run, when I go in the ring in 6 months' time, I'm A, going to get punched in the face, I'm B, going to lose, and I'm C, going to be embarrassed, and it will be all my fault. And that really resonated with me to go, if you don't put the prep in for this, and there's a bus that follows you around, you will be on the bus and you'll be so unhappy because it's a one-time opportunity. And that made me put the work in. It made me stay in on Saturday night when everyone else was out at festivals going, no, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock because trust me, I might not be a cyclist, but cycling with a hangover, no, you don't do that. It makes it doubly hard if you were a late night or had a little bit to drink the night before. So it changed my mentality to go, I can do it. Oh, you have to put the work in. No, nothing comes easy, even if it is a big thing. You obviously know that yourself, is not easy to achieve something that's massive and set a massive goal, but it felt amazing when I did.
Yeah.
And if the wheelchair does turn up, which it will do at some point, I know that will happen, because now I discovered I actually don't have any cartilage left in the knee. I'm literally bone on bone, and I don't know how I'm walking without any pain. My surgeon told me a month ago, I don't even know how you're walking, let alone cycling. So I didn't realize that had happened. So that might be my one big challenge that I could do on a physical basis. So I'm so glad that I did take that time out, and I did put the work in, and I did sacrifice stuff to achieve something that was a huge deal for me.
Right.
For me, other ladies, they've done it a million times. They were like, yeah.
Okay, so there's a young girl. She comes up to you. She's been in a car accident, and she doesn't know what to do next. What would you tell her?
So I would say to her, don't listen to the worst case scenario. They have to give you that. Look for the positive scenario. Look for something that you want to do. So you've been in a car accident, if you're in a wheelchair or not in a wheelchair, there'll always be one big thing that can be like your beacon of hope that you can work towards, whether you're working towards it on a laptop and training yourself and understanding things, whether you can physically do it. It doesn't matter what it is. I 100% believe that if you want to do something, you really, really want to do something, that you can achieve it. And I also believe that everybody is destined for a big life. And if you want a big life, then don't settle.
Excellent. I love it. Okay. So how did you get through it? What are like 3 things that you did to get through it?
So my main was that I was so optimistic that I had the best case scenario. So I came at it from this could be so much worse. And so I got through it just, and I'm going to say one foot in front of the other, but that's mad, isn't it? It's a mad saying.
Yeah.
I just listened to the medical people. I went step by step. I chunked it down into, if the physio says do this for this week, that was what I did. So if they said bend your knee over and over and over, and even if it made me cry, and even if it hurt, I did what I needed to do, what the experts told me. And then in terms of the rest of it, it was very much, I don't know that I had a lot of choice, realistically. I had a business, I had children. I just had to get on with it as such. But my mentality is so much that I'm very helpful. I'm always like, okay, so what's the silver lining? The silver lining is that, the funniest silver lining is, so anyone that's been in business would be, you're always told that you should work on your business and not in your business, yeah? So hairdresser, nobody ever gets a receptionist because you're too busy, which is madness, because you're asking a 16-year-old junior to answer your phone and run your business.
Yeah.
So what happened was, when I couldn't work in the business, my clients I never lost any clients. They just went to other girls, but they were all part-time. And I started working on my business. We excelled. The business went from strength to strength. The insurance company at one point said, maybe we should, you should be thanking us for having the accident, because you've done so much better afterwards. I put all of my focus that I couldn't physically use, because at that time, when I couldn't physically use myself, I was in a gym. I did not fit in my life. I had to work out how to fit, how to have a life. Like, I did not fit into everybody going to a class, been to a class, or teaching a class. That was my world. So all of a sudden I don't fit into that. So I had to find a new way of doing it. And I'm working on the business, made it more successful, gave me that drive, gave me that distraction to say I'm still achieving something, I'm still doing something. And that momentum, I suppose, we actually did scale the business quite big in the 5 years afterwards. And then I had more operations to come. So I just got rid of it all because it became too overwhelming, really. It's not a very good short answer, sorry.
No, that's a great answer. Okay, so how can people work with you?
So if anybody wants to work with me or just talk to me about their story in terms of how I can help them, they can find me on LinkedIn, Debbie Bryan Coach. I have a website, which is www.bryanacademy.co.uk. And my telephone number's on there. Somebody just send me a WhatsApp and we will chat. I do have lots of programs for either women entrepreneurs or for people that are not in business. And
Oh, you're on mute now, Debbie. Sorry, you're on mute. Debbie, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. I was sorry, you might have to edit a bit. So I basically feel like I was lucky. I had a lot of support. And so if I can offer anything to anybody else, even if it's just a phone call to say, look, come on, there's hope, not necessarily for someone to work with me, but if somebody just wanted to reach out. I raised £2,000 on the cycle ride last year for autistic children in our local community. So I just think if you can give back, if I can help somebody, that's great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think my final words is the big life. I literally believe I want a big life. I'm sure you want a big life. If you want a big life too, then don't ever settle for anything less than the big life. Do the dream, do the work, just don't settle. Love
it. Okay, there you go, everybody. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for listening. This is the episode of Grit, Guts, and Courage.